Oh, hello there. Yes, well, we are safely through midweek and into a bit more of midweek. Yes. I am often amazed on a daily, perhaps sometimes even an hourly basis by just the number of people that are held up as somehow being intellectual giants that we should really listen to because they only talk sense. And yet, a mere cursory glance, just a vague sideways one, will tell you that what they're saying is absolute drivel. And I must just share this with you from the Coast Guy, which I was all over Twitter yesterday. There's a section of the grifterdom out there, and you can see the way that they operate quite clearly, and they must know that they're lying, right? Okay, they just must know that what they're saying is utter tripe, but they say it because they have to present themselves as these sort of populist, anti-boss, ordinary people, but at the same time then get into all sorts of problems whereby they can't actually say that they're going to criticise the economic system and the people in charge because that's where the money comes from. So they squirm around it or just lie. And I love this. Okay, let's just unpack this slightly. Inflation is caused always and only, right? Always and only, really need to emphasise that, by the printing of money. It's a transparent attempt to disguise a Ponzi scheme, which is the conjuring into existence of money from nothing, which only banks are allowed to do. Okay, but banks don't print money, do they? Think about it, realistically. Anyway, every time they magic up more money, all they do is devalue any money you had in your pockets or savings. This is deliberate. Well, sort of, but no. Since the creation of the so-called Federal Reserve, well, that's what it's called, Mr. Guy. The actual value of the dollar has fallen by at least 90%. Inflation is the invisible tax. Yes, we live in a system with inflation. It's built in... No, don't even say that. Anyway, our government, everyone's government, uses banks to put people into debt. Okay. Uses banks to put people into debt. Okay. And then continuously devalues the currency by creating more money, always out of nowhere, and so making it harder and harder for everyone to ever be free of that debt. Okay, if all debt was repaid, all money would vanish. I don't really understand that. But to just sort of, leaving aside the kind of weird drivel at the end in terms of, yes, banks want us to go into debt because they charge interest, usury, which is very much against God's wishes, obviously, and that's how they make more money. So therefore, they're going to push credit cards on us. That's capitalism, Coast Guy. Capitalism. You're criticising capitalism. Okay, not governments as such. But the simple idea, and I do see this with people like Connor Tomlinson, come back to him in just a second, who will forever come out with this, that inflation is always and only caused by printing money. To which I would have to say, okay, one of the reasons we have, for example, universal franchise in this country is due to economic issues that there were in the 1820s and 30s, okay? The last time we had very poor regular harvests in the UK, for a number of different reasons, was the 1830s, which severely pushed up the price of bread, okay? Because, there wasn't a lot of corn around, and when something is rarer, the price goes up, right? Okay, economics at 0.1, right? 1830s. Was the government at that point printing money? No. Still, okay, yeah, it gives us the opportunity to have a go at the banks and the bad people in government, but not my boss, because he pays my wages, and he's the one that is heavily invested in a system which is making people poorer. Anyway, to come on to Connor Tomlinson, because he posted up a piece on Twitter yesterday, which I think is the absolute epitome of the kind of appallingness that he represents. We hear a lot in the last few weeks because Reform, etc., use it as a cudgel against the government about rape gangs and grooming gangs and gangs of armed judges. No, I keep saying that, don't I? No, just generally bad Muslim people who are bad because they're religious, and they're bad because, they target women and men, right? Now, Connor buys into this because, of course, it's his bread and butter. It's his job, right? Okay? But it does lead him to post things which are astounding because, oddly enough, he cannot apply it to himself. So that's what I'm going to do today, just to help him along a little bit. But do bear in mind that this is his job, and he is someone that believes that inflation is only ever caused by printing money. So it's a weird mixture of a belief system and an economic system together. Yeah, sounds like capitalism, doesn't it? But anyway, let's have a look at what he put. Will the regional grooming gang inquiries examine the racial and religious motives of the racists? Well, probably, because it's an inquiry, Connor. It's going to be the kind of thing that they do. Any suggestion that Islam motivated the perpetrators of Britain's worst scandal is met with accusations of racism and Islamophobia. Well, yes, very often, because often that's the central point about it. Hence why aren't people banging on about white people committing these crimes so much? Answer, well, it has less of political traction. Coming on to that, Yasmin Qureshi, a Pakistani Labour MP, that's important, isn't it? To argue it proved sexual violence is not specific to any gender, race or religion, which is debatable to a certain extent, if you like, but it certainly isn't specific, is it? But the difference between Britain's rape gang scandal and the White Glasgow gang, or Giselle Pellico's case, is that there was no systemic cover-up of the latter due to sensitivities around the perpetrator's race. Okay then, that was inevitably part of it. But when we actually look at the previous inquiries that were done into the rape grooming scandal, one of the major problems there was that an endemic belief in the police force that the young women involved were basically working class sluts. Okay, and therefore they could be easily dismissed as just little girls who were probably asking for it anyway, which I don't think exactly is what Connor is going to want to be the truth, and yet that is what previous inquiries have found. There were issues in and around male attitudes to women, that endemic thing within society, which is apparently, according to Connor, not a problem amongst good, decent white men like him. Come back to that notion as well. Furthermore, just because sexual violence is a constant across civilizations, well, we get that at least, it is not committed at the same rate or for the same reasons. Well, obviously it's not committed at the same rate because crime isn't the same. Shoplifting will be slightly different on Tuesday from what it is on Wednesday. He means over time, and we don't really know about that because the crime statistics can't really tell us anything about that. We know that more rapes are now and sexual assaults are now actually logged by the police, but as to over time, we don't really know. There's a good likelihood that it is less now than it used to be, but it's actually more open, and maybe a cursory glance at a sociology GCSE textbook would inform him of this. Don't think it's going to happen, that particular one, or for the same reasons. No, rape is always committed for exactly the same reason, Connor, okay? It's to do almost, well, not all exactly 100%, but basically it is to do with male power over women, and that is a constant throughout time and throughout history. I will point Connor to the Crusades and their record of sexual violence. Good Christian boys that they were, for example. But I guess that doesn't count because that was a while ago, and our religion doesn't do that anymore, which we can definitely see with the modern Catholic Church. Or indeed, I can't think of any particular reasons why archbishops have recently had to resign because of scandals. None whatsoever. Yes, there are an abundance of verses in Islamic scripture which psychopaths might cite to justify their predation on non-Muslim children. Yes, indeed, and there are multiple passages in the Bible which say that men have domination over women, Connor. Remember that Bible? That thing as a good Catholic boy that you'd be very, very keen on. Yeah? Men have domination over women, and think about all those American right-wing grifters who are most insistent that women should just stay at home and shut up. All those people that think that women shouldn't have the vote, because after all, you can't trust them, can you? You know what they're like. Yes, those kind of modern advanced guys that we have, like Connor. Indeed, the perpetrators recited verses from the Quran as they talked to the girls, deriving justification from their faith for their crimes. Yes, indeed. And again, I'll point you to the Catholic Church, of which you are a member, Connor. In mosques or madrasas, Dr. Charles Hergley warns men are taught that women are second-class citizens, little more than chattels or possessions, over whom they have absolute authority. Yes, like it says in the Bible, Connor. It's like they say in the Bible. Because, of course, you see, the problem with me and Connor's attitude of, well, I'm just here to defend women and children, is that he won't defend women and children. He's quite happy to go on anti-abortion marches. Here's one, for example. When was this from? 2023, not that long ago. Large crowd for March for Life 2023 in Westminster today. Pro-abortion counter-protesters looked as expected. Yeah, a bunch of people disgusted at the bigot religious people that are taking away rights from women. Regarding women as mere chattels, as baby machines, Connor. That kind of thing, which I don't know. Is that something that your religion doesn't do? Or is that something that magically you don't do? In which case, why are you there? Why are you there? But of course, Connor's views about women and what they should do, and indeed, about the value of children, go much further than that. I'll point you to this particular one from, again, 2023. Without the contraceptive pill, the legal and medical structures that legitimise trans ideology and let it spread wouldn't exist. There you go. That's a stunning and a totally unfounded statement for you. Yes, indeed. Contraception is bad. You see, mustn't have that, must you? No, only God can decide who has children. Oh, okay then. Right, yeah. Well, that's medicine out the window then. I imagine that Connor won't actually take any medicines because, I guess that would be against God's will. Got a headache? Tough. Live with it. God wants you to have one. Astounding. But nevertheless, there we go. I guess that's his modern up-to-date stuff rather than merely being medieval. I don't know. Maybe he would be against leeches as well. Who knows? It's Connor. He makes this stuff up as he goes along because he can easily convince his target audience of 14-year-old blokes that magically, because they're blokes or indeed because they have white skin, that there's something special. I think that's what he thinks himself. This led to abortion. Did it? How did the pill lead to abortion? Okay, anyone with a cursory knowledge of, again, Jesus, of history will tell you that abortion has been around forever. Infanticide was a thing. It's a thing in the Bible, Connor. Jesus, making childlessness the preconditions for women's total workforce enrolment, you see. And here we get into the economic, I'm a coast guy populist nonsense, right? Okay, here he's going to basically slag off capitalism, but of course he won't actually do that because, of course, that's a Marxist thing. We can't have that, can we? Not going to actually criticise the economic system, but criticise the economic system at exactly the same time. Hence why, post-Roe, companies pay out-of-state transport for female employees seeking abortions. Yeah, apropos of pretty much nothing at all. Do they? I don't know, Connor. It's totally unfounded accusation. Maybe some of them do, in which case it would be considered an in-work service. But why should women not have abortions? Well, Connor doesn't want them to because his God says so. But he wants women to be protected, yeah? So if, for example, a woman has an ectopic pregnancy and they die, that will be God's will. In a kind of protection sense. I don't know, it sounds like a protection racket to me. The egalitarian assumptions of what constitutes empowerment in feminism, there we go, another target, demand women chemically, cosmetically and ideologically remake themselves as unisex market participants, biological neuters whose sterility will let them compete with men. Yes, indeed. Yeah, women aren't having enough babies. Women aren't staying up at home enough. Yes, and women basically have choices. Imagine the awfulness of that. It's against God's will, I would imagine. Yes, nonsense on a stick, okay? The arrow of history hasn't really pointed that way for what? I don't know. Let's think Mary Wollstonecraft, 300 years plus. But of course, Connor is a modern, up-to-date guy. He's a hip, happening kid who really is on the ball. But he only is there to protect women from, presumably themselves, delicate flowers that they are. There are a whole bunch of sociological words for that, okay? Yeah, the chivalry syndrome, where you don't see people as actual human beings with their own inner desires and monologue. No, you see them as things that must be treated in a particular way. You must give up your seat to a woman on a bus. Why? I'm old and my feet hurt. Anyway, to say gender is a costume, as Butler did, is an extension of the logic of the materialistic form of feminism. Yeah, see, feminism is really, really bad. Why? Because I think basically it threatens Connor's worldview. In fact, it threatens every single thing that he believes in. So women mustn't believe in feminism. But of course, by feminism here, he means the God-ordained right of men to make those decisions. That's really what he means. Transgenderism and transhumanism is the prodigal son of the sexual revolution. Blah, blah, blah. And then he goes on about Matt Walsh, of course, everyone's favourite pro-women thing. But, of course, Connor isn't just not very interested in women, although, of course, it's worthwhile pointing out that he does regularly sit to the left or the right, or perhaps in the lap of Carl Benjamin. Yeah, a man intimately involved in Gamergate, and yes, him of UKIP, I wouldn't even do something appalling to Jess Phillips. Yes, him, a man who, having thought about it for an entire decade, has decided that maybe he shouldn't have said that. Yes, that famous women's rights champion that he is. And Connor also regularly hangs out with people like Calvin Robinson, another one that earnestly believes that women shouldn't do, well, basically anything other than stay at home and have babies because it's what God wants. But, you need to be bang up to date, not like Islam. Imagine that, an out-of-date religion dictating what you do and indeed your attitudes to women. I mean, Carl doesn't even have that excuse because when he was involved in the whole Gamergate thing, which, for those of you who don't know, is basically a bunch of 30-something males, they were probably too young to understand, right? Okay, who decided that because they didn't really like girls writing about gaming, that they'd, basically threaten them with assault and rape. Yes. Oh, that thing again. Gosh, never really goes away. But it's for a different number of reasons, isn't it, Connor? Yes, it's never just about power. Yes, it is. Yes, and of course children. Yes, of course children. Oh, we must protect the children, mustn't we? Yes, except, of course, I have never, ever seen Connor write anything about government policy in and around children whatsoever, other than teachers are bad. Okay? Doesn't care about children, doesn't care about women, doesn't really care about sexual assault. Not in any real extent. It's just a way of making a living, like the rest of them. Nasty grifters. But the problem, of course, ultimately, is that these people are applying pressure on the government because they want legislation. Connor wants abortion to be banned. He probably, if you push comes to shove, would want would want contraception banned as well. Okay, mate. But you think you might want to have a word with women before you actually decide that might be a good idea. And then, of course, you'll ignore them and you'll try and desperately somewhere. There's always some not very bright or indeed grifter for the sake of it woman who will go on their show, and they've had them on before, to argue that women basically should stay at home and obey their man. Yeah, brilliant. Let's go back to the 1930s, Connor. Let's go back to the 1830s, Connor. Let's go back to the 1530s. Let's go back to the 1230s, Connor. Because you're a modern progressive guy that, isn't stuck in some outdated religion that basically treats other human beings like dirt. Thank God for that. And I mean that most literally in your case. Jaya. Anyway, do have a gorgeous, what is it now? Thursday. Nearly there. Oh, I told you it's been a long week. It's been a long week, but my God, hiding behind the skirts of women and children. Nonsense on a stick.